I had not intended to answer the gate myself. The hour was late past the second wolf watch, when Keldreth's corridors had gone to stone silence, and the fires had been banked low against the deep season cold. My steward was somewhere in the eastern wing. My guards were posted at the outer wall. The knock at the private gate, the small iron door set into the hold south face that only my household used, was faint enough that I almost let it pass. My wolf lifted his head. He had been restless for months, a low, directionless restlessness I had no name for, that woke me some nights and sent him pacing the edges of my awareness like a man searching for something he has dropped in the dark. My healers said it was nothing. My counsel said it was the long winter. I said nothing, because I had no better answer, and I had learned long ago not to speak about things I could not explain. But when the knock came a second time, soft and deliberate, my wolf went still. Not the restless stillness of a creature waiting to strike. The other kind. The kind that comes after months of searching and then, without warning, stopping, because the thing lost has been found. I rose. I pulled my cloak over my shoulders and crossed the corridor alone, which I would later understand was not coincidence. Some things arrange themselves. I lifted the latch and opened the door. She was standing in the snow. She was not what I expected, though I had not in truth expected anyone. She was slight but not fragile, wrapped in a traveling cloak the color of storm cloud, a healer's satchel slung across one shoulder, and a small lamp in her free hand that had gone to almost nothing in the wind. Snow had collected along the ridge of her hood and on the bridge of her nose. Her face, when she looked up at me, was composed, the particular composure of someone who has been traveling for a long time and has made her peace with discomfort, and is now simply waiting for the door to open all the way. "I'm sorry for the hour," she said. She had a low voice, unhurried, with a slight northern border cadence. "I was told the south gate. I have a letter from the healer's register." She was already reaching into her cloak, entirely unsurprised to find a large man she did not know standing in the doorway of what she appeared to believe was a perfectly ordinary household. "I'm expected. I'm here to see Counselor Davin Merritt." I looked at her. She looked at me. My wolf inside my chest made a sound I had never heard him make, something between a breath released and a name said aloud. "Counselor Merritt," I said, "lives in the eastern hold, on the far side of the city." She blinked. She stopped. She looked at the gate behind her, then at the ironwork above the door, then at me again with an expression of careful, controlled reckoning. "The south gate, Merritt Lane." "The south gate," I said, "of the Alpha's hold. This lane is called Merritt Lane because the Merritt family lived here 4 generations ago before they moved east." I paused. "It is a common confusion." It was not a common confusion. No one had made it in the 6 years I had lived in this hold. Something crossed her face, not embarrassment exactly, but the precise calculation of a woman working out what comes next. The lamp in her hand was nearly gone. Behind her, the snow was falling harder than it had been a moment before. The gate she had come through was 40 paces back, and the street beyond it was dark. "I see," she said. "Could you tell me the route to the eastern hold?" "In this weather," I said, "the upper lane will be drifted. The lower lane takes you past the river road which floods in the Meltoff and is not safe after sundown." I considered her lamp. I considered the snow. "The pass east closes at third watch, which was," I looked up at the sky, "15 minutes ago." A pause. "Ah," she said, the single syllable of a woman who is far too composed to say anything louder. My wolf had not moved. He was still watching her with that particular arrested attention, the way a creature watches something it has been looking for without knowing it was looking. I stepped back from the door. "Come in," I said. "My steward will arrange a room. The pass will reopen at first light." She looked at me with the clear, unhurried gaze of someone assessing a situation, not afraid, simply taking my measure. "I don't know you," she said, not an accusation, a fact. I'm Aldrich, I said. I hold Keldrath. Another pause, fractionally longer. Ah, she said again, in a different key. And then, because she was, as I would discover, constitutionally incapable of being overwhelmed by anything for more than a moment. I'm Sable. I appear to have knocked on the wrong door. Thank you for the room. She stepped inside. My wolf breathed out. I told myself that first night that it was simple hospitality. A traveling healer caught in a blizzard, the pass closed. The household would arrange a room, a meal, dry clothes if she needed them. By morning she would be on her way to Counselor Merritt's Eastern Hold, and that would be the end of it. A story I would not particularly tell, because there was not much to tell. I went back to my study. I did not think about her composure in the snow, or the unhurried way she had looked at me, or the sound my wolf had made. My wolf thought about it. He was restless in an entirely new way, not the pacing, searching restlessness of the previous months, but something more like attention. Like a man who has been calling into an empty room for so long he has stopped expecting an answer, and then hears one. I worked until the fire went low. Then I went to bed and did not sleep well, which I attributed to the hour and the season. In the morning the pass was closed. Not the ordinary closing of a drift-blocked lane, which the clearing crews could deal with in an hour. A full-hold blizzard had come in from the northern ridge overnight, the kind that came perhaps twice a winter, that shut every road out of Keldrath for anywhere from 1 day to 4. My head of the guards came to me at dawn with the report. The outer gates were sealed. The hold was warm and stocked. We were built for this. But nothing would be moving east until the storm broke. I thanked him and sat for a moment with that information. Then I had my steward inform our guest that she would be staying another night. I did not go to the morning hall for breakfast. I had correspondence. I was, in general, a man who took his meals at his desk during the working season, and there was no reason to change the habit simply because the hold had an unexpected occupant. I worked through the morning. I did not wonder what she was doing. I did not ask after her. My wolf kept angling his attention toward the east corridor where the guest rooms were, like a compass needle that could not decide whether to be embarrassed about its own behavior. At midday my steward knocked and said, with the particular careful expression of a man delivering news he finds interesting, "The healer, my lord. She has asked whether she might be useful somewhere while she waits. She mentioned she saw 2 of the courtyard guards favoring their right hands in the cold." I put down my pen. She noticed the guards from where? From the upper window, my lord. She said she could see the way they held the spear shafts. I thought about that. A healer's eye, trained to watch movement, catching a compensation pattern from 40 feet above and through a snowstorm. "Send her to the infirmary," I said. "Ask my healer captain if she would like the help." The answer came back within the hour. The healer captain would very much like the help, and the 2 guards had old cold joint injuries that had been waiting for someone to address them properly, and would the Lord like a report? The Lord did not need a report, but I found myself, that afternoon, taking the long corridor past the infirmary on the way to my armory, a route I did not usually take. The door was open. I did not stop. But I slowed enough to hear her voice inside, low and steady, talking a third-year pack soldier through the explanation of what had happened to the ligament in his hand and what could be done about it. She was not performing patience. She simply had it. The soldier was asking questions that a woman of less composure might have found tedious, and she was answering each one as if it were the most reasonable question she had encountered that day. I went to the armory. I spent longer than necessary reviewing the winter weapons inventory. At supper my steward, who was old enough to have served my father and who had seen considerably more than he ever commented on directly, arranged the table in the small hall off the main kitchen. The informal one, used for winter evenings when the great hall was too large and too cold, and mentioned, while laying the second place, that the guest had not yet eaten, and that it would be discourteous to make her take a tray alone in the east corridor. Fine, I said, because I was a lord who prided himself on discourtesy to no one, and this was not, in any meaningful sense, a concession. She arrived a few minutes after I did. She had changed out of her traveling things. My steward had apparently located something suitable in the winter stores, and she sat across from me with her healer's satchel still by her chair. From habit, I thought, the way people keep their tools close. She looked rested and entirely at ease. She did not appear to have given more than a moment's thought to the fact that she was taking supper with the lord of the hold who had mistakenly housed her. "How are the guards?" I said. "Better," she said. "The one on the left will need to be careful of that hand through the rest of the cold season. He's been compensating long enough that the muscle on the inside of his wrist is shortened. I showed him the exercises." She helped herself to the bread. "You have a good infirmary. Your healer captain trained at the Eastern Register." "She did." "I thought so. The layout is her school's design." She looked at the soup. "This is excellent. What is the herb in the broth?" "Winter thyme from the lower greenhouse," I said. "And something else. I don't know the name." "Snow fennel," she said, and I believed her. We ate. The fire was large. The small hall had a hearth meant to heat it through deep winter, and it was going well tonight. Outside, the storm was pressing at the shutters. Inside was warm and lamplit, and I realized somewhere in the middle of the second course, entirely comfortable. I was not a man who found silence with strangers comfortable. With Sable I found it comfortable. She did not perform conversation. She spoke when she had something to say, and otherwise ate her supper without apology. "You came far," I said. "From the border provinces. The healer's register rotates practitioners around the northern holds in the cold season. There's more need here than in the south, and fewer trained people willing to make the journey." She broke another piece of bread. "I've been doing the rotation for 6 years. I don't mind the winter." "You came alone?" "With a register escort to the city gates," she said. "The last stretch inside the city I prefer to walk. I had good directions. A beat. To the wrong hold." "The directions were to Marit Lane," I said. "They were not wrong." The understanding of which building on Marit Lane was incorrect. She looked at me over her cup with an expression that was not quite a smile, but occupied the same space as one. "You're being very precise about the nature of my error." "I am precise about most things." "I noticed," she said. My wolf, who had been sitting with his nose angled toward her side of the table since she sat down, made a very small sound of what I could only describe as contentment. I ignored him. I was good at ignoring him. I had been ignoring him for months, and I was not about to stop now. "How long do you expect the storm?" she said. 2 days, I said, "possibly 3. She absorbed this without any visible dismay. "Then I'll be useful," she said. "I don't sit still well." The storm lasted 3 days. I am not by nature a man who adjusts to disruption with any particular grace. My hold runs on order watch schedules, supply rotations, correspondence sent on fixed days, council meetings on fixed mornings. I had built Keldrath's winter administration to be a machine that ran cleanly and required from me only the decisions a machine cannot make. I did not enjoy unpredictability. And yet, the first day she spent largely in the infirmary, working through a backlog of cold season complaints that my healer captain had not had time to address: joint stiffness, a respiratory infection moving through the younger guards, 2 cases of frostnip that had not been properly tended. She sent a report through my steward at the end of the day, clear, numbered, specific about what had been done and what needed watching. I read it twice. It was the best organized healer's report I had seen from anyone not on my permanent staff. In the evening she appeared in the small hall again. I was already there, which was not, I told myself, significant. "Your southwestern storeroom has damp coming in through the lower wall," she said, taking her seat. I noticed it walking back from the infirmary. The wall mold pattern suggests it's been there since mid-autumn. I looked at her. How do you know the mold pattern? Healer's training covers building conditions as well as bodies, she said. A damp hold is a sick hold. I can show your maintenance steward where to look tomorrow, if you like. I would like that, I said. She nodded and picked up her spoon, and we ate in the comfortable silence that had apparently installed itself between us overnight without asking permission. My wolf was curled in the back of my awareness with his chin on his paws, watching, not pacing, watching, with a focused, settled attention I had not felt from him in I could not remember how long. The second day the storm worsened and everyone stayed inside. I worked in my study until mid-morning, then found myself restless in a way I did not usually permit. I walked the corridor. I reviewed things that did not need reviewing. I passed the infirmary twice without going in, then went in on the third pass because my wolf was making the circling motion again, and I had run out of reasons to go in the other direction. She was sitting at the workbench with two of the younger pack soldiers, not treating them, teaching them. A basic lesson in field wound dressing, practical and efficient, conducted with the matter-of-fact ease of someone who had done this 100 times in worse conditions than a well-lit infirmary on a winter afternoon. The soldiers were paying attention in the way that young people pay attention when they are not aware that they are learning, when it feels more like being shown something interesting than being instructed. I stood in the doorway for longer than I intended. She looked up. She did not appear surprised to find me there. She simply waited, with that unhurried attention of hers, to see whether I was coming in or going. "Don't stop," I said. I sat at the far end of the room and read the weekly reports I had brought with me, and she continued the lesson, and the soldiers glanced at me once with wide eyes, and then forgot I was there, because she brought them back to the bandage in their hands with a single quiet question. When the lesson was done, she crossed the room and sat beside me with a comfortable informality that I did not know how to account for and said, "You should send 2 or 3 of your people to the register for formal training. You have enough traffic through this hold to need more healers than you have." "I've been thinking that for 2 seasons," I said. "Then send them in the spring. The cost is modest and the register will take northern candidates on good standing." She looked at my correspondence. "Are those the winter supply accounts?" "They are. You have a line item for the infirmary in the 3rd column that's being applied to the wrong category. It should be in consumables, not fixtures." She was not leaning over my papers. She had simply seen it from where she was sitting, reading at the angle that healers developed for reading things sideways. I looked at the column. She was correct. "I see it," I said. "It happens," she said, and stood up and went back to her workbench. My wolf was making the noise again, the quiet, contented one. I collected my papers and went back to my study and spent the next hour not thinking about her, with the very focused effort of a man who is doing exactly the opposite. The second evening she found the library. I don't know how, it was not on any path she would have taken to or from the infirmary or the guest corridor, which meant she had been exploring, which I found I did not mind in the way I would have minded it from anyone else. Most people who wandered my hold were looking for things that mattered to them, position, advantage, something to report to someone. She appeared to have been looking for books. She was in the window seat with the second lamp from the left pulled close, and a volume of Northern Territorial histories open in her lap when I came in for my own evening reading. She looked up without alarm. "I hope this is all right," she said. "I should have asked." "It's a library," I said. "It is, by definition, for reading." I took my usual chair. A pause. "Do you always read in here in the evening?" she said. "Yes." "I won't disturb you." "You're not disturbing me," I said. We read in silence for perhaps 20 minutes. The fire in the library was smaller than the one in the hall. I had never seen a reason to heat the room to full warmth since I usually read alone, but it was enough. The storm outside the shutters had eased slightly. The hold was very quiet. "This history is wrong about the founding pack dispute in the third generation," she said. She had not looked up. I set down my own book. "Which dispute?" "The one over the Eastern Ridge passes. The author says the Keldrath Pack conceded the South Ridge in the Second Compact, but the border provisions in the First Compact actually reserved it." She was still reading. "I grew up near the border. My grandmother knew the old records." "You grew up on the Keldrath border?" "The far end of it." She turned a page. "Your pack's territory extends further than most people realize. The eastern markers go well past where the maps stop." I had known this. Very few people outside the hold knew it. I looked at her with the particular attention of a man finding that a door he thought was a wall has a handle. "Where exactly on the border?" I said. She named a village. It was, as best I could calculate, perhaps 30 miles from where my pack's eastern boundary reached its furthest extent. She would have grown up, I worked the geography, within the outer pull of Keldrath's territory. Not inside the formal bounds, but close enough that a wolf who had been raised here might have felt it in childhood as a direction, as a general sense of which way was home. My wolf's attention sharpened. "I said nothing about that," I said. "The records your grandmother knew, do you still have them?" "Some in the Register archive. I can send you a copy when I get back." She finally looked up from the book, and her eyes in the lamplight were the color of dark water in autumn. "Why?" "Because I've been trying to find the correct account of that dispute for 2 seasons," I said. "The official history is, as you've identified, wrong." She looked at me for a moment with an expression I could not entirely read, something between amusement and assessment, both gentle. "All right," she said. "I'll send them." She went back to her book. I went back to mine. My wolf had gone still again, that deep specific stillness with his whole weight settled. The third day the storm broke. I knew before the morning reports came. The quality of the silence changed overnight, the pressing, insistent silence of heavy weather becoming the open, rinsed quiet of clear cold. I lay in the dark before dawn, and my wolf was doing something I had no word for, attending the east corridor in the way of a creature that knows it is about to lose something. I went to the window. The sky was clearing. The pass east would be open before midday. I went to my study and wrote correspondence for 2 hours, and did not come close to the east corridor or the small hall or the library. This was entirely deliberate. She was a healer from the border provinces on a register rotation. She had been housed in my hold for 3 days because of a blizzard and a shared street name. This was the complete extent of the situation. There was nothing further to consider. My wolf thought there was something further to consider. He was wrong. She appeared at my study door around mid-morning. She had her traveling cloak over her arm and her satchel on her shoulder. She looked, I thought, exactly as she had when she arrived, composed, self-sufficient, the cloak the color of storm cloud, her face open and unhurried. "The pass is clearing," she said. "I'll head to the eastern hold before the midday shift. I have work to finish for Counselor Merritt." She paused. "Thank you for the room, and the meals, and the library." "You were useful to the hold," I said, which was true. My healer captain had sent a report at dawn that was effusive by her standards, which meant she had used the word excellent twice. "That suits me," Sable said. She looked at me for a moment. My wolf was very still. "I'll send the archive records," she said. "I'd appreciate it." She nodded. She stepped back from the doorway. And then, I cannot account for this except to say that what happened next was not a decision. Exactly, in the way that decisions are made, I stood. "I'll walk you to the gate," I said. She did not say this was unnecessary. She simply waited for me to come around the desk, and we walked together through the south corridor toward the private gate where she had knocked 3 nights ago. It was a walk of perhaps 4 minutes. We did not speak. The hold around us was moving into its morning activity, guards changing, the kitchen beginning the midday preparations, someone in the upper corridor calling to someone below. Normal, ordinary sounds of a household at work. My wolf was not making the contented sound anymore. He was making the other sound, the one from before, the low, searching restlessness. Except now I knew what it was searching for, and it was going to be 3 steps ahead of us, and then in front of us, and then gone through the gate. We reached the south door. I lifted my hand to the iron latch, and my wolf planted himself between me and the door with his whole weight, and would not move. Not metaphorically. I mean that the pull of him, the pack pull, the bone-deep instinct that ruled a wolf's body and could, in moments of urgency, override the man, stopped my hand on the latch. Not force. Something stronger than force. A certainty. The way your hand stops before a flame. The way your foot finds purchase on ice before you register the slip. I stood with my hand on the cold iron and my wolf immovable between me and the opening door, and the bond surfaced. I had heard it described by the mated wolves in my pack. I had heard the words, the mark warming, the recognition, the knowledge that arrives without instruction. I had never felt it in 20-some years of my alpha's life. I had concluded, quietly and without drama, that perhaps for some wolves there was no fated mate. Perhaps the bond was a thing for others. I had made my peace with it. What I felt, with my hand on the latch and Sable standing 3 paces behind me, was not warmth exactly. It was more like hearing a sound I had been hearing at the edge of my awareness for months, suddenly at full volume. The restlessness my wolf had carried all winter, the directionless searching, resolved into a single direction. Behind me. Present. 3 days and I had not recognized it because I had not let myself recognize it. And my wolf had been too patient with me for months and had apparently, finally, run out of patience. On my right hand, along the inside of my wrist, the bond mark rose. I knew what it was. I had read the accounts. A pale silver-gold flush of light, spreading from the inside of the wrist and settling in a pattern as individual as a face. The visual proof, in the Keldrath tradition, of a true mate bond fully recognized. It did not hurt. It felt like warmth finding a surface it had been looking for. I turned around. Sable was standing very still, looking at her own right hand. The mark was there, identical in the pattern as the accounts all said it would be. Her face was doing something I had not seen it do in 3 days, not composure, not assessment, not the quiet humor she kept at the edges of everything. Something much more open. Something closer to the way the hold had felt this morning after the storm broke. Rinsed clean, a particular quiet, the kind that comes after something large has finished. We looked at each other across the corridor. My wolf was sitting back on his haunches with the air of a creature who has been trying to communicate something obvious to someone for 3 days and has now been proven right. "I see," Sable said, very quietly. I found, after a moment, my voice. "I owe you an apology," I said. She looked up from the mark on her wrist. "Do you?" For 3 days of certainty that this was a simple logistical situation. I looked at my own hand. The mark was settling, deepening slightly, the way I had read it would. And for being the kind of man who might have opened that gate anyway, which would have been, I paused. I would have regretted it. She was quiet for a moment. The corridor was warm. Outside the south door I could hear the hold beginning the business of a clear morning. "You knocked," she said, "or rather I knocked on the wrong door." "No," I said, and this was the sentence that surprised me most, because I am not a man who says things like this, and it came out without the careful framing I usually applied to words. "You knocked on exactly the right door." She looked at me for a long time with those autumn dark eyes. Then she set her traveling cloak over the corridor bench. She set her satchel on the floor beside it. "All right," she said. "Then I suppose I should know the hold better than 3 days allows." I brought her before the pack that evening. There was no ceremony prepared, there had been no time, and I did not want a ceremony that felt like something assembled from parts. What I wanted was what happened. I walked into the great hall at supper, Sable at my side, and I said, "The bond is declared." She came to the wrong gate, and my wolf has been intolerable for 3 days. Her name is Sable, and she is from the eastern border, which is Keldrath's outer reach, which means she has always been inside the pack's bounds, and perhaps my wolf knew it before I did. The hall was quiet for a moment. Then Bran, my head guard, who had spent 3 days being treated by this woman for a hand injury he had not admitted to anyone, said, "She's the one who fixed my hand." "She is," I said. He stood. The guards on either side of him stood, because guards follow Bran. The household followed the guards. The council members, to a man, followed the household, because there is a moment in a great hall when the direction of things is established, and all the quiet social machinery of a pack runs with it. My wolf, who had orchestrated this entire situation with what I now understood was extraordinary patience, was satisfied. Sable, standing beside me, took it with the composure she took everything, watching the hall rise with the clear, unhurried attention of a woman who is cataloging what she sees and will form her own assessment in her own time. She did not look overwhelmed. She did not look triumphant. She looked, I thought, like a woman who has knocked on what she thought was the wrong door, and has decided that she was, in fact, right all along, and is simply confirming it. She sent word to Councillor Marrett's eastern hold that she had encountered an unforeseen circumstance. The register received a formal notification of mate bond declaration. My healer captain, who within 4 days had begun referring to Sable as the other healer captain, in a tone that suggested this was a done matter, began reorganizing the infirmary on principles that had apparently been needed for 3 years, and which my healer captain had been waiting for a peer to validate before implementing. The southwestern wall's damp was located, repaired, and sealed before the thaw. The archive records arrived in the spring, with a note in Sable's handwriting that they were correctly categorized under border territorial disputes, Eastern Meridian, 3rd through 7th generations, and that the author of my incorrect history had clearly not read past the second compact. I had the correct account put into the library's official collection, and the incorrect volume moved to the section labeled, by the library keeper with dry precision, Works of Uncertain Accuracy. There is a thing I think about, now, when the cold season comes and the lanterns go up in the south corridor, and the fires are banked in the small hall for winter. I think about 3 nights of supper with a woman I had told myself was simply a logistical situation. I think about a blizzard that closed the pass for exactly long enough, and a street that shared a name for 4 generations of old history, and a small lamp going out in the snow, and the way my wolf had been restless for months without being able to tell me why. I think about the moment I stood with my hand on the iron latch and knew I would not open it, not because of the bond mark on my wrist, which had not surfaced yet. Before that, in the second before my wolf stopped me, a half-breath of certainty that something was behind me that had no business being on the other side of a gate in a clearing storm. I know now that some bonds arrive not through ceremony or trial or the formal channels of a pack's traditions. Some arrive through a wrong turn on a winter night, and a knock, and a woman standing in the snow with a healer's satchel and a letter addressed to the wrong hold, entirely certain she has the right address. She was not wrong, she was never wrong. She was simply, as she pointed out to me once, with the particular half-smile that had come to be the thing I looked for first when I entered a room, navigating by a map that the rest of the world hadn't drawn yet. Keldrath is warmer than it was. I don't mean the fires, though the small hall is better stocked than it used to be, and the library hearth goes full in the evenings now. I mean the quality of the hold, the way the guards talk to the infirmary staff, the way the kitchen asks after the sick roster, the way the East Corridor sounds on winter mornings with two voices instead of one carrying to the south stairwell. The border archive records are properly cataloged in the library now. The history is corrected. The southwestern wall has not shown damp in 2 seasons. My wolf is not restless. He has not been restless since the night I opened a gate I had not meant to open, and found the one thing I had apparently been searching for without the language to name it. A woman with a lamp gone out in the snow, looking for the wrong door, which turned out to be the right one. I open the gate for her every morning. It is the smallest of habits. I am precise about small habits. She comes in every morning with her satchel and her unhurried step, and every morning my wolf does the thing he did the first night she arrived. That release, that settling, that particular quiet of a creature that has finally found what it was looking for. Every morning. The fates, it turns out, have a very dry sense of humor. The wrong door. The same street name, 4 generations old. A blizzard closing a pass at exactly the wrong time or the right time, depending on which map you are reading. I have stopped believing in wrong doors. Every door I have opened since that winter has led exactly where it was meant to lead. I simply needed someone to knock, with that particular composure, in that particular snow, with that particular lamp, to understand it.